Hello and welcome to episode 7 of Sitting In. I hope you're all doing good. Just a couple of things I want to go over before we get started. First of all, just want to say thanks to everybody who's checked out the merch. Really appreciate that. I can't unfortunately see who's actually bought it, so I can't say thanks to you individually, but thank you. And also thanks to the 8 people who have left a review on the iTunes page. So if you are finding value from this, do consider getting some merch or sharing it on Instagram, or just leaving a review on iTunes. All of those things really do help support what I'm doing and also just get the word out there so that more people can hear about these conversations. And one other thing is that most of these episodes, up until episode 8, were recorded before the COVID-19 situation. So a lot of plans have unfortunately changed for the artists that I've spoken to. So do go and check out everybody on social media and support what they're doing. And with that being said, today I'm sitting in with Audrey Bussanich, who is a singer-songwriter and jazz musician based in Colorado, but currently studying at Berklee College of Music in Boston. I've known of Audrey for quite a few years now, and so it's been really great to sit down and have a chance to talk about, where she's at with her music and how she got there. So I really enjoyed this conversation, and I hope you do too.
Cool. How's it going?
It's going.
Good, sweet.
It's a good day in Boston, not too cold.
Yeah, good. And you're kind of hanging out at Berklee nowadays, I believe.
So I just moved. Well, I moved to Cambridge, Massachusetts in September to start at Berklee, from Colorado into Cambridge, which is like a 20-minute bus ride between where I was in Cambridge and school. And then but I just moved again to a house on Commonwealth Ave, which is right by school. So now I feel like I can really, now that I'm not a 20-minute bus ride away, I can be at school a lot more. And it's really opened up a lot more opportunity for me to collaborate with my peers and just immerse myself in the Berklee kingdom and all it has to offer.
Yeah, I think that's a common thing I hear from people who study at these kind of places like Berklee and NYU. It's if you're not really near the place itself, it's like you're missing out on tons.
That's so true.
I think one thing when I went to Berklee, I was there for a week staying with my friend. I never actually went to Berklee, but I visited Berklee. And I think one thing that I was most just blown away by that we don't really have here in Edinburgh is just the community. It's everybody, I'm not saying everybody's a great musician, but there's tons of decent musicians just everywhere, and that must be super inspiring, I can imagine.
Especially coming from Colorado Springs, where, well, it was I had a really good community there in the arts, and I could walk down the streets of my hometown any time of day, any day of the week, and inevitably see somebody that I knew. And so going from that to Boston, which is such a huge city, felt super overwhelming, and I felt so small in this giant, massive city. But sure enough, now that I've been there a semester, even I recognize people walking down the street. There are so many people that I know, and there's that sense of community, which is part of the whole reason why I came to Berklee, because I knew I could get training anywhere from people who were good at what they do, and that I would benefit from that. But I really missed a broad community and people to play with and collaborate with. And so that was a huge driving factor in the whole decision to go back to school and transfer.
Cool. Yeah, no, I think I totally understand what you're saying. I live in Edinburgh in the UK, and if you've not been there, it's a fairly small city, really small city. It's really beautiful. You should definitely check it out. There's a great community musicians, but it doesn't go much further than I don't know. I feel like there's a very small pond here, but a very good one at that. So I just remember when I visited Berklee, I was like, oh man, this is so cool. There's just musicians everywhere, and everybody was so nice as well. And
yeah,
I don't know if that's because I'm a foreigner and they're like, oh cool, you got a funny accent.
Well, but I mean 50% of the students at Berklee are all foreigners anyways, yeah. Which is kind of fun because in my band, there's a guy from Dominican Republic and there's a guy from Korea, and so there are all of these different languages in one band. And I'm the only American kid, and it's kind of a cool, interesting shift. And Yeah.
Nice. Sweet. All right. So fast forward back 20 or so years. You
Flash
know
forward
how?
back.
Yeah. Oh, wait a minute. Let's reframe that. Rewind 20 or so years. Um, yeah. Let's maybe you can tell me a bit because I've known you for I think a few years now because of Instagram actually. Like, um, definitely like been consuming your content for a while now, and I've saw a lot of kind of changes happen, but I don't really know much about, and I doubt the audience knows much about, who you are and where you came from particularly. So why don't you tell me a bit about, maybe how you got into music and how you got to where you're at now, because you've been through a lot of sort of changes, I believe.
I have. So, I started playing piano when I was 3. My parents put me in lessons, and I loved it. Like I remember my earliest memories are like sitting at my grandparents' piano and playing it, and then like my first piano lesson and like sitting on the stool and learning how to curve my fingers, and there was like the little footprints where your feet would go because I was too short for the bench, um and I played Jingle Bells, and like the sense of satisfaction of hearing, like, I knew Jingle Bells like the back of
Yeah.
my hand, but then to be able to create it outside myself and hear it back was
Hmm.
a really incredible feeling. um so I studied classical piano really consistently until about age 13 or 14. And I did like classical composition type competitions and that sort of thing. Um, and I would say that while I really loved playing classical music and playing the piano, I I always really I really wanted to be able to play what I could hear in my head, if
Yeah.
that makes sense. So that's like what like led me into composition. But yeah, I think I always felt a little bit out of place in the strictly classical world because like as a small child, I would like make up new sections to compositions that were already played, and like in the middle of a recital like diverge. And my teacher would be like, what happened,
Right.
what are you doing? um and so yeah, I think that sort of like sense of wanting to be able to articulate what I could hear in my head, but not yet having like the tools to do that. Um, I don't know. I think I just kind of became a little bit tired of piano. So I took about a 2-year break and did some different things. Like
What age were you at that point?
the break happened at like age 13, 14.
Right. So that was like 10 years of piano then. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was 10 years of like strictly classical piano. Um, and So I took a break for about 2 years, and then at age 16, I started taking lessons again through the university in my hometown. I like enrolled while I was in high school for dual credit,
Mm.
um, and started studying. That's when I started taking music theory, and because like I knew classical, but I started learning theory in a new way, and like jazz, sort of um, jazz theory, and that really opened my brain up to this like whole new world. And I started playing at age 17. I started like learning how to play guitar, and then eventually ended up in like a rock and roll band playing like dive bars every weekend, and then going back to school and studying like Bach and Mozart and
Sweet.
Rachmaninoff.
What were you playing in that band? Was it guitar?
I was playing keys, but then I
Right.
slowly started like I picked up guitar, I picked up mandolin, and then I was singing a lot. And I'd say that band, that rock and roll band, was like really what got me into songwriting, which is kind of my focus now, because I was with a group of musicians who really cared about songwriting and really just wanted to like jam on new songs and like help me bring the music that I was hearing in my head to life
Yeah.
in a real band environment, which is what I had always wanted to be doing, even as a little kid. So, yeah.
Wow, cool. All right. So you also, I saw recently, or more recently, you've been playing bass a bit as well, right? Oh.
Yeah, so I got a bass and I love it. If I
Hmm.
could be like, I haven't really had time for it, but I really love it. There's something really satisfying about like playing the bass in a different way than any other instrument, I think.
Cool, sweet. Yeah, no, I really love bass as well. Although I think, I don't know, often as a guitarist, it's like you think you can play bass, but you can't really play bass. It's like that
Play
role
like a
is,
bass player.
yeah, it's a completely different role. And one thing that I think like fascinates me about your approach is that you can play so many instruments like really well, and it's like I didn't know you'd been playing since you were 3. Like that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like I think I started playing when I was 11 or 12. So it's only just been 10 years on a guitar for me, roughly.
Yeah.
So that's pretty incredible that you've managed to cram so much like instruments or learn so many instruments in. I guess it is a long time, but I just think it's really
I'm
interesting.
Yeah, it is. And it's kind I don't even really think about it because I don't know, I feel like when I learned guitar, it was just cuz like it was right there in front of me and I was interested in it and I was like this would be like cool and also like practical in this setting. Like I can't always be hauling my keyboard around places and not every venue's going to have a piano. Um and then like mandolin, I needed like a clarinet for some demos, so a friend gave me the clarinet and I
Right.
like
So if you
figured
were
out how to play that.
Yeah, so if you were to rank like all the instruments you play from most comfortable to least comfortable, what would it be? Can I try and guess?
Really, I think, yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna say that your voice is top, right?
Yeah.
And then it'd probably be piano, guitar. I'm not sure what else you play. Bass then mandolin maybe, or mandolin then bass, and some sort of wind instrument. Is that right?
Nailed it.
Oh,
Yeah.
great.
That's exactly
Sweet.
how I would classify it.
Cool. Yeah, because I came across, I mean, I can't even remember now because it's been so many years, but I think I came across your stuff because you were doing a lot of scat sort of soloing and interesting transcriptions of jazz records. So what got you into jazz? Because I can understand totally you having that idea of like, I have something in my head, I want to translate that, and then improvising during your recitals. Like, it seems like
Yeah.
you were drawn towards that part of the music, but, you know, what was there a moment where you were like, oh yeah, I really want to do jazz? Like, what
Yeah.
influenced that?
Growing up, my dad, he played a lot of like my mom was the Mozart for Babies mom, but then my dad was like a lot of like classic rock and then jazz stuff. So I really remember like listening to a bunch of we had like a big record of Gershwin standards, and I would listen to that a lot growing up. And then but I think what really got me interested in jazz though is I started swing dancing. I started doing Lindy Hop at like age 17 or so, 16 or 17. And I would like spend 5 nights a week going to different dances with live bands and just like really immersed myself in this dance. And I really grew to love the music and to love that like swing jazz feel, and then branching out into other realms of jazz. And so I would say it was really through dance that I really discovered my love of jazz.
Wow, that's super interesting. I don't know anybody else who's come to it through that way. Usually it's like, yeah, you know, I played a bit of blues and then it just eventually got into jazz and it was like, ah.
Right.
Or a lot of people are like, yeah, just it's always been around me. But
Yeah,
I know for me it was the improvisation that drew me in.
for sure. Did you have like a classical background as well going
No,
into it? Or
no.
was it always just like,
I was just a kid, like, just started playing like rock guitar, learned to tap and sweep and shred and do all that stuff.
yeah.
And that was when I was in high school, and it just translated or transferred into learning more technical guitar pieces like Joe Satriani. And then eventually, what happened was I was in college by this time, so I was already 17 maybe, and I still hadn't got into jazz. And then I heard, do you know the guitar player Guthrie Govan? He's like a shredder, like,
Know him though.
right. I wouldn't suppose you would, but yeah, I heard him playing like straight eighths over like a kind of like a funk thing, really. But he was playing like all these bebop lines, and I was like, "What is happening here?" I'd never heard that before, and I was just so hungry to find out what that information was that I could hear. I was like, "What's happening?" And lucky enough, I was getting lessons at the time, and that led into just looking at, all right, well, this comes from here, and then eventually it took ages, but I got into actually listening to jazz music. I ignored it for so long because I don't know. I just had this view of jazz where it was like it was so beyond me.
It was inaccessible or something.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if that's just because I wasn't in like a jazz college or something like that, but it just felt like something that was way beyond what I could have done. Because when we were younger, everybody would be like, like jazz guitars is like the hardest thing ever. You can't, nobody does jazz guitar, but it's just because who you were surrounded by didn't do it.
Right.
But now I'm lucky enough that everybody can play jazz.
Yeah,
Well,
like slappy guitar riff.
yeah, right. But yeah, it took me years, but now I feel like if someone was to ask me what style of music I dig the most, I can say that. And it's funny because it's such a long way from my dad letting me hear a jazz record for the first time, and me saying, "All right, Dad, I really respect you, but this sounds like nonsense to me. I do not understand it." But that was 8 years ago. It wasn't that long ago. And then, yeah, just kind of that's what I like now. Long process for sure. Yeah, so growing up then, from the age of 3 to, sorry, what age are you actually now? 20?
22.
22, right. So 3 to 22. There must have been, such a long time, but it's not really,
Like for like the first 10, you're only so like competent at things.
Totally. And your hands are like tiny, yeah.
I know.
Has there been any like major inspirations in this whole process? Because so many different instruments, probably so many different styles. Could you name pivotal sort of like names that have been like great?
Moments. Okay. Yeah, I'm sure I can. So, yeah, so I would say this last year has really been pretty much all of 2019. I really committed to I just sort of thought, if life can be like a pick your own adventure type thing, what am I going to choose for myself? And I made a list of like the things in life that really inspired me, and made me feel really alive. And I was like, okay, I need to like do more of that. Like that's a sign that like this is where I come to life. So why would I not do that?
Yeah, cool.
Like musically. So earlier this April, I did a songwriting workshop with a gal named Judy Stakey, and she's been in like the A&R publishing business in the States for ages. And she runs this amazing workshop for songwriters, and I got into it and I attended, and it was just sort of like this light bulb moment, because I had been writing songs for 3 years at that point. I had been playing music since I was 3. And this was just this last year that I went to this workshop. But I never saw myself as like a pop vocalist. I'm not gonna, be like the next Ariana Grande or whatever like that.
It's funny. I knew you were gonna say her name, because for some reason everybody at Berklee like says that name. I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah. I'm not gonna be like some like, powerhouse vocalist in that way. I'm not gonna be. I don't want to be like a classical pianist. I felt like I have these two skills, like as a pianist and as a vocalist, but I don't know how to use them. And I went to the songwriting workshop, and it was just like that light bulb went on. Is like, oh, songwriting is how I use those skills. And like I use my skills as a vocalist and an instrumentalist to like convey the songs that I write, and that's like the modality of my like musicianship, I guess. And yeah, I got a lot of encouragement from Judy, and that's also when I just decided to transfer to Berklee at that point, and really like take ownership of that part of my life and interest, and pursue it. Yeah.
Cool.
So
So you've released an EP now, or is it an album? I can't remember.
I released I released 2 EPs. My first
Right.
EP was when I think that's almost 4 years old now, which is
Oh
kind
wow.
of
Cool.
astounding. And then the second one is a year and a few months old. And then in the middle somewhere, I released a single that I worked on with one of my friends and the guy who produced my second EP.
Cool. So if you could describe your sound to people who haven't heard your music, which obviously everybody should check it out, but if you could try and describe your sound, and I have a problem doing this as well, I find it difficult, but if you could try, could you give that a bash?
Okay, so singer songwriter, like I would say singer songwriter with like Americana jazz influences.
Cool.
As I don't know, that's a tricky one.
Yeah, no, I'm sure it will come to you as you kind of.
I don't know.
Cool.
That is a hard one to.
Yeah, no,
to,
it's difficult,
That's
and
the thing I struggle with.
yeah, every record's different, right? You know, I'm sure you could tell me what the first one sounded like. Like for me, whenever
Yeah.
people ask like what this thing I'm working on is supposed to sound like, and I honestly find it difficult to categorize other than what I think is that it sounds like the color purple. And
With music.
no, I've spoken about this quite a bit, and I don't actually, but I know I'm quite good at. I can draw music. I like doing that,
Yeah.
like kind of abstract, but I find it easy to transfer sounds into visual things.
Yeah.
But I don't see it. It's not something I actually like see the color purple.
Oh, but like there's a visual element that's very linked to it within yourself.
And I remember one time I really gave myself a chance to explore that by I listened to I think it was The Way Up by Pat Metheny. It's like potentially a 20-minute piece. Obviously largely improvised because it's Pat Metheny, but and I drew it. And I can still look at that piece and I actually understand it, obviously because it came from me, but I know it makes sense to me. It might not make sense to everybody, but yeah, sometimes I find it easier just to like draw a shape. Oh, it's kind of like this shape, you know? But not everybody gets that.
It's so interesting. So when I started voice lessons this semester, my professor was like, "How do you hear music?" And I was like, well, like in shapes. And he was like, "Okay, what is this shape?" I was like, "Oh, it's a triangle," and then it like kind of, but it's like kind of drooping on one side. And he was like, "Okay, well, I want you to think this shape instead." And it was like my whole approach to the way I sang it changed because I was like,
Did you find that to be beneficial? Him or her, them saying change the way you see it.
I did.
You did?
I did. Yeah, for sure.
Interesting. So, do you find that there's a consistency in that? So, say you listen to I don't know, a tune, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you drew the shape of like the first melody, and then say 4 months later you've done the same thing. Do you think there would be a consistency? Because I know for me, there probably wouldn't be. I think it would change depending on how much I've listened to it.
I don't think that there would be either, but I would have to do it to really know.
Because the way I realized I could make this connection was actually with names. Like, I remember people talking about names and they're like, "Do you like that name?" Not because I'm going to have a kid or anything, but just talking about names. And I had to think, why do I not like the name, whatever name I don't like? And for me, it's like it's a textural thing. Like, Audrey is super, like, it's a very soft name. Like, I could draw that and it would make sense to me. Whereas my name, like, I don't actually like the way my name's said. It's like Reese. It's like so sharp and then soft. But the way it's written, I like that.
Your name is like oranges and reds in my mind.
Right. Because to me, it's like I could draw it.
Shape as well.
Yeah, the shape would be, and again, I don't know if this would be consistent, but it'd be kind of like a V with like a little twirl at this like V because it's sharp, and then it's like kind of it just dies out at the end. Whereas Audrey, to me, is quite a long name. It'd be like just a bunch of like like I'll actually draw it. It'd be kind of like Honestly, just like
Yeah,
like I
like
don't know.
little waves.
Something like that, yeah. Or like, imagine there was lots of bubbles, but the top half was cut in half, and there was just a bottom. I don't know.
That's pretty
It's an
interesting.
interesting thing, and maybe I could incorporate that into like the album artwork or something. Like, there needs to be some purple in there, but what's every tune gonna look like? You know?
That's interesting that you say that about the colors. I think I definitely like my first EP. Each song has a sort of own colors mentally,
Right.
and then the second one also has its own like set of colors that are very different. Yeah.
So, do you find this kind of well, is it a process or is it just a way of visualizing things? But either way, do you find it beneficial towards creating music, or do you find it something that just comes secondary? It's like, well, I could attribute these ideas to it.
I think it comes like alongside.
All right.
Like it's in tandem. It's not something that I like. The color and shape association isn't something that I build into the piece after it's already created, but it's something that builds with it, if that makes sense. I
Yeah.
think they're like tied together somehow. Um, yeah, and it's yeah, it's a kind of a weird.
No, it's interesting to talk to you about. Like, I've not really spoken to too many people about. It would be great to talk to someone who actually does have like proper synesthesia, so we could chat about their perception. Because I know a few people. But anyway, all that kind of stuff linking into kind of your music. What is like? This is different for everybody, and it's probably one of my favorite things to talk about. But what is your creative process for like writing music? So an idea comes. How does it get to the end? You know, and where does the idea come from? Because I know you're really into art and dance, obviously, and I'm just interested in how do these other art forms feed into your music, if they do. There's quite a lot of questions there, but
Questions. Okay, so in terms of process, I think oh, well, so I try to write every day. Um, Even if it's just like first thing in the morning, whatever's in my brain. It's not like I write a brilliant song every day. In fact, quite a lot of times I wake up and the first thing in my brain is just like a lot of like mumblings about nothing in particular.
yeah.
But that gets me in the habit of saying what I think without having to judge it,
Yep.
and also like getting the junk out of the way. And then I'd say like in terms of like when I go into a co-write with the song, it's always like, tell me like, you know, what's if we're not coming in with like an idea already set to work on and we're trying to find an idea, I like to like ask questions like what have you been thinking about, what's life been like for you, and then there's always like a theme or an idea or a phrase that emerges from that. And then one of the exercises that I like to do is I like if I have a theme, or sometimes like I'll have like a musical melody, I'm like, what does this remind me of? And then I think of a story and I almost imagine like if this was like a short film,
Right.
like what is this scene, what is my perspective, like um is this like the guy, at his like mother's doorstep with like in like a dozen yellow roses, and he's about to knock on the door and he hasn't seen her in 30 years? Or is this like the mom on the other side like washing dishes in the sink and it's just another regular day for her?
Right.
Is this like a split second moment? Is this is this someone's like lifetime?
Ah, cool.
And so in order to help me like construct the song, I try to think about like what does it look like, sound like, feel like, what is the timeline, like what's the perspective, like it's almost like constructing like a painting or
Right. It sounds very like a very calm process where it's like, all right, I have an idea. Now I'm gonna think about it. Like, I personally write a lot out of like excitement. Like here's an idea, and I just follow it and follow it and follow it, and then there's numerous sketches of it as well.
I think that there's also like I think pretty soon, like once the idea gets in the driver's seat, like that's what you really want, you know?
Yeah.
But it's just a matter of like finding the idea that then like I'd say like the songs that I've written that I felt really proud about felt like they wrote themselves, and like it was like I was uncovering some like archaeological like dig, and I
Yeah.
just like discovered Atlantis. That's how it feels to me. It doesn't feel
Cool.
like I like built Atlantis, if that
Right.
makes sense.
So, out of the songs you've written, are there any that stand out? Because you said the songs that you're proud of. Maybe we could talk about that because
Yeah.
why are you proud of them? You know, maybe you could tell us one track name and we could talk about that. And I'll put like maybe a snippet of it in maybe about now or something. But
So, that's an interesting question. So, I recently, it's interesting that you asked me about that, especially in reference to like my old work, because recently I've been feeling like so like what I have written and what I have produced
mm-hmm.
feels really like outdated to what I know I can produce now.
All right.
But I haven't um been able to like release what I have created that's new, if that makes any sense. So like but in terms of like a song that um I feel proud of, I
You can be just tell us.
so I really, oh man, okay, so I'm just like having to think of like which ones I
No,
have
that's
actually
fine.
released. Okay, so a song that I was really proud of when I wrote it would probably be Won't You Come Too, which is off of my second EP.
I've got a dream to fly among the stars. Oh, won't you come to my darling? The plain seats too for a visit to the moon. Oh, won't you come to my darling? When it all
I liked it
comes
because
down to
it felt
living ain't easy on your
um
own. It's a
yeah, I felt proud of it because I could I I could like hear it back, and I was like, oh yeah, I can see that. I know what that sounds like, tastes like, feels like. It like I think the best songs are always ones that like I know if there's a moment when if I like laugh or cry as I'm writing, that like that's like the song is working on me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I would say that that's a song that had that like had that effect on me.
All right. So in terms of the timeline of that song, you know, like maybe if you want to talk about maybe what it's about, what is there a scene or an idea that song particularly like you feel like it portrays well? Because it obviously seems like it's moved you in a way, and that process has been beneficial. So is there an image that kind of captures?
Um, yeah. So, um, when I wrote it, um, I was just thinking about like, oh man, I'm not sure. Wait, can you like repeat the question? Because I'm like a little like
All right, so
I like got lost in like
yeah,
the
of
nebulous
course.
of my own thoughts.
We were talking about earlier. We were talking about how when you're writing, or maybe this is a new practice, you try to think about what kind of scene or sort of timeline that the song encapsulates or what's about. I was wondering if the song that you're chatting about has a particularly strong. Is it a moment in time that's been captured, or is it the result of something, or
Oh, like what inspired the song, basically.
yeah? Because obviously, I'm hoping people will go and listen to it, but sometimes it's nice to know a little bit more about it.
I think when I wrote that song, I was uh oh man, I have to like dig back. So it's the song itself is like an invitational song. It's called like Won't You Come Too? Like I had all of these, like, I think I was thinking about like what a beautiful thing it is to be able to invite another person into your life to share it with you. And I was thinking, I was really like feeling that desire to like share my life, because I like, not only with my friends, but like with the people closest to me. It's, the song was addressed to like a specific person, but um yeah, like I was thinking about what a privilege and a joy it is to be able to like invite somebody into your life to like share it with you and enjoy it with you, and like all of the dreams that I have, which on their own aren't really of substance without that sharing.
Cool. No, that sounds great. Like, no, absolutely. Well articulated. I know maybe it feels like, oh, I don't want to talk about what the song's about because it's personal, but I appreciate you sharing that. And I think one thing, I was speaking to someone recently about this, and I find personally that when I know the artist, for example yourself, or a little bit about the context of the song, I actually appreciate it a bit more. Some
Yeah, for
people have
sure.
the opposite, where it's like they don't really want to know about the artist because maybe the artist's like not actually a great person, and then that can,
That you're
yeah, like you meet your hero and you're like, oh, he's not nice or she's not
you're
nice. Yeah,
terrible.
totally. Um, but I really enjoy that, and I remember particularly it was when I went to New York, and do you know Horace Bray?
Only by name.
Cool. Well, I'd known of him for a while, and I only knew of him as like a guitar player, really. And he
Hmm.
done, I think it was one of his first shows where he was putting his songs out, where he sung as well. And it was a really nice show. But I remember just feeling like extra invested in it because I knew the person a little bit. You know, I don't even know if we'd consider each other friends, but I knew of him and like where he'd come from. And I think that's the great thing about social media, that you know people can go back and look at what you were doing years ago, which is good and bad. But there's a story there, and when you know a little
Yeah.
bit of it, the music is like, I don't know. It's, you have a bigger picture potentially what it could be about, and I find that quite. I don't know. I like it.
I'm curious. So you, your new record, these are all pieces that you've composed, or like,
Yeah, you're talking about my new thing. Yeah.
so how do you, as like as a instrumental composer, like find your like your stories, or your like, I mean, like as a singer, like my voice is like my voice, you know what I mean? Like you play a guitar which doesn't have that same like, there's not like, it's not like a fingerprint in quite the same way, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
I'm curious, like in your composition, like how do you, like how does that go for you?
How
Being
how does
instrumental
what go
writer,
for me?
like your composition and like developing your voice as a guitarist, as opposed to like, because these are also questions I'm asking, is like who am I as a vocalist and as a pianist,
Right.
and like in the way that I interpret something, how do I define that, like how do I do that as myself? So like I'm curious about you as a guitarist.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just trying to work out what you're asking me.
I'm also trying to work out, I guess what I'm asking, what I'm curious about is like, um like what has the process been like for you in
Finding my own sound, my own inverted comma.
like
Yeah, I think
as an instrumental composer and guitarist?
yeah. So I think a lot of artists talk about this, and it's maybe quite cliche now, but I think it was Picasso who says, you know, just try and draw a perfect circle.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the idea that, well, linking it into music, you know, you try and copy, in a lot of your younger years as an artist is like trying to sound like John Mayer or something like that. And eventually you realize that you're not going to be John Mayer, and you settle for the indifferences. And in this process, I've come to a point in my playing where I feel like I actually have something to say, and I've been practicing improvisation longer than I've been practicing composition. So it's kind of interesting for me because it's been a process of learning to slow down, and like I just love improvisation. That's my thing in music. I'll do that all day, and I prefer that to composition in a way. But for me, this project is like more than just my first sort of like business card as an artist, because it's obviously going to be that, because Instagram doesn't quite sell what I sound like. It's just lots of random things, really. Um, but yeah, it's about slowing down and like trying to develop a bunch of ideas that I think represent potentially what I sound like. Not everything I sound like, because I just like so
Snapshot
much.
of
A
this
snapshot
moment.
of my life, yeah. But it's none of the compositions, like, I've actually got them on a whiteboard right there so I can look at them. But none of them are like, no, I guess they are all in a way a snapshot of something. Like, there's a tune called The Dreamer, and that's going to be probably like the first single. And it's the most epic out of them all. And I totally know what that's inspired by. And I guess I'll talk about that maybe once the album's released. But then there's another one that I'm not sure if it's going to be on the EP, but it's called Violet. And during that writing process, I started to get inspired in a way by something that had happened to a really close friend. And the composition made so much more sense once I knew the story that it could relate to. So I never wrote it like for this person, but it kind of ended up being for them because it made
Yeah.
sense. But then there's another tune called Lotus, and that came out of something, it wasn't meant to sound like that at all, but it just made me feel like, like a lotus flower just like floating over water. And
Yeah.
it's a very simple idea, but for me, that's what the music is.
Yeah.
And yes, I'm not sure if I've answered your question in that, but I think the thing I'm working on right now, it's just a snapshot, and a snapshot of the last 5 years, maybe. I'm not playing like any shredding guitar stuff, because that's not really what I do now. But is that helpful?
Really interesting. Yes. Yes.
Cool.
I was curious about the minds of my fellow artists.
Yeah, it's
I loved it for so long, but at the same time, like they're like, there's so much I still don't know.
yeah. I mean, I think that's the thing about Instagram. It's a very small part of like what everybody does, unless you're totally devoting your life to it, which I maybe did when I was in university, but that's because I had time to do it. Now I'm just like not really that into it, to be honest. But yeah, linking into sort of inspiration and all that stuff. Are there any artists that you're checking out right now that you feel are inspiring you massively? Because I know there's really a couple artists in particular this year that I've been just listening to non-stop, and they really do inspire the way I sound. Maybe not directly, like people can hear, oh, that sounds like this, but
Yeah. Yeah, so artists that I found inspiring. So, wow, did I say that right? I don't know what words just came out of my mouth.
Good enough.
Artists that I've found inspiring this last year. So this last year, I had Casey Musgraves on repeat all the time.
Cool.
I really love her storytelling style, and she's just so. I found myself being really drawn to artists who are very like unapologetically themselves, and they're not concerned with like what sounds popular necessarily, as much as they are concerned about like creating from a place of that like integrity with self, and like seeking to grow outwards from that. So yes, so I've found a lot of inspiration in Casey Musgraves and in Joy Williams' record, her most recent record, Front Porch. I've been really inspired by Bruno Major as well.
I was hoping you would talk about that, because you got to support him. Like, was it last year or this year?
Here.
Ah, sweet. So how was that?
It was like an incredible experience, and like I used to just like lay on my bed and just like listen to his music, and it would fill up my room, and I'd just be so moved by it. And then there was like the pickup jazz competition on Instagram where you could like, you covered old fashioned, and like you would be entered and like used whatever hashtag you'd be entered to like,
Yeah.
you know, possibly open for him. And I actually didn't win that competition, but he shared my video and then contacted me and asked me to open for him anyways on the tour, which was like astounding. And I got the email, and my friend had been bugging me. He was like, you've got to like ask him, be like, hey, like you're coming to my city, like you've got, you know,
Yeah.
can I open? I was like, no, I can't do that. I can't do that. I was just like, I was like, I'm not worthy. and and then like I get this email, and then the title was like Bruno Major Bluebird Theater, and then the date, and I was like, oh, my friend bought tickets, and they sent me like the tickets. That's really nice. And then I opened the email, and it was like an invitation to open. And yeah, I think that he's another musician who inspires me. Well, for one, like just like sharing a theater space with him. He's very very welcoming. He's like, you know, you meet artists who like are all stiff and like, you know, have their heads in the clouds about how great they are, but he is so down to earth and just like is like engages with people and engaged with me. And so I really appreciated that about him, and that's something that I respect. And also like, not only is he just like a very considerate like person to like share a stage with or open a show for, but like he's also just like, he's like so good. He's just like an incredible musician as well. So like to see, you know, to see those two things side by side, like yes, they're like,
No, it seems like you'd be a great fit for that kind of show, because I imagine you both come from similar in some way backgrounds.
There were some similarities in terms of like training, that sort of thing. And yeah, I think I was at that songwriting treat when I like got the email, and I like freaked out, like, what do I do? Am I ready? Like, and then I just was like, no, like I can do this. And so I like, yeah, and it was great. It was like one of the most fun shows I've played, and I did it all solo and with my keyboard and my guitar, and it was like it was, well, there aren't really like words for that sort of feeling, but
Yeah.
it was just like a really big honor to be asked to open for an artist that I respect so much.
Yeah. No, I can imagine. That sounds incredible. So we are recording this on Friday the 13th of December, actually. I'm not sure when it'll be out, but what's happening for you in 2020? Because obviously I imagine you're super, super busy with college and studying, but is there anything exciting happening?
So yeah, so my plot for next semester is to really, so I'm going on tour, which is like still yet to be officially announced, but in end of May and beginning of June 2020, I'm doing a tour in the States. And so really my plan for this next semester is to really develop that show and develop the songs that I have been writing this last year for that, and then release a couple of singles. I have a couple in the works currently to be recorded and released. But yeah, so because kind of like I said earlier, I have this old work, but it's like a snapshot, and it's valid, and but I need to be, and I want to be like continuing to grow and present something new. So that's my sort of plan over the next 7 months, is to get those singles released, have my new and have my new show prepared, and
So is that a band show?
going to be solo. So my friend Abigail Orsborn and I are co-touring together. So
Cool.
she's another solo artist we've co-written together, and yeah, so we're planning that together, and I'm really stoked about it.
Sweet. So I guess I don't know if you want to talk much about it because it's not released yet, or it's not been announced. But how many instruments are you going to bring on tour with you?
For sure, keyboard and guitar, and potentially uh, potentially a couple other instruments. But yeah, for sure too.
Cool.
Yeah.
Sweet. Yeah, I wish I could say that. Like, if there's one instrument I could just, not that I'd want to switch guitar for something, but I just wish I could play piano to the way I can express myself on guitar. I wish I could do that on piano.
Yeah.
But I think that's partly what maybe maybe it's best just to keep it on guitar because it's gonna push me in a way that's like not
Mhm.
maybe the same as every other guitarist. But yeah, no, I just wish I could play piano. Like,
Yeah.
but I don't try at all. That's the thing. Like, you should see. This is the only piano I have. I'm actually going to show you because it's embarrassing. I used to have like a big one, but I sold it because I didn't use it. This is my piano.
Oh, it's so
It's
cute.
it's a MIDI keyboard that I use for like just rubbish sounds basically. So yeah, I'm not good at keyboard. I wish I was, but I'll just play guitar. But actually, one thing that would be good to talk to you about briefly is so I don't do this for my artistry, but I do for workshops that I do. I do a lot of workshops actually with like young kids, and in this last year, I've had to sing more than I've ever sung in my whole life. And I love it. I really do. And I might be singing songs like like "You've Got a Friend in Me" and stuff like that, or like our pop songs.
That's
But
such a good song.
yeah, no, it's fantastic, and I love singing it. But if you could give advice to anyone starting to sing who's already a musician, like someone who, like me, for example, what advice would you give? Because I know very little about vocal technique. I only just learned that if I'm going for a high note, I don't want to stretch my neck. I want to try and keep my chin level, I believe. But like I have no technique, and I'm not going to sing down a mic for you just now. But if you could give, like two pieces of advice to someone learning to sing, what would it be?
Piece of advice to somebody learning to sing would be, I think the thing that's helped me most is is an understanding of like the anatomy of my voice,
Right.
and so that I can like actually express myself
Cool.
in the ways that I want to. So yeah, I would say like learn the anatomy of the voice, and then that just like allowed me so much more freedom to actually like sing the way I wanted to. But then and then also, so like, yeah, learn the anatomy of your voice and like technique, and then find stuff that you love to sing that like, but sing it in the way that you would sing it, or find stuff that suits like you and your delivery fashion, because I think that's something that I've kind of been like running up against. I had this like little like breakdown being like, I feel like I'm running into like all of the problems in my voice, but I haven't spent the right amount of focus, time, and energy to like fix those problems, and so I'm
Right.
just getting frustrated. And my professor was like, honestly, he's like, you're fine. Like, you don't really have any of those like, you don't have these like big problems like you think you do. I think that you just get too up in your head about it and overanalyze. And he's like, you need to learn to love your voice for what it is and for its unique qualities, and then use it and sing songs that you love, because there are people who need your instrument who don't have it without you.
Totally. No, that's fantastic advice.
I would say, yeah, learn technique so that you can be free with your voice, and then really love your voice, and because it's really special. It's like a fingerprint. It's so
Yeah, I
unique.
think I know. Like, I would love to run with that idea. Like, there's something I'm gonna go to in 1 minute. I don't want to keep you too long because you're probably busy. But that applies to all instruments.
Yeah.
The thing about drawing a perfect circle, that's what it's about. And learning to love, the way your circle looks. It's like, yeah, I remember linking into my point I wanted to go to, reading Kenny Werner's book, Effortless Mastery, and had so many light bulb moments reading that. And yeah, I recommend it to all my students, like particularly people who are like, I sound bad, or if they're trying to get into improvisation but they feel like they have nothing to say. I always recommend reading Effortless Mastery. So I guess the final thing I want to quickly chat to you about is, have you taken any of his lectures at Berklee, at Kenny Werner?
Not yet.
You've not.
Taken
Are you
one.
familiar with his work?
And in fact, you recommended that book to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't not read it yet, but
check
it's
it
on
out.
my list.
It's so good. Everybody says that to me, and I'm like, just check it out, please, because
Yeah.
it's phenomenal. And I even know what
For
chapters.
Christmas.
Yeah, I remember speaking to my.
What do you want? I'll put the book on my list.
Yeah, no, it's just it's a great it'll open up your hopefully it'll kind of inspire you in some way. It really did for me. It was kind of a pivotal it was great. Came at the right time. But yeah, anyway, I hope everybody goes and checks out your music and sees what you're up to in the oh, what are you gonna say?
I have one question. I just thought
Sure.
of this real quick. So when you're soloing,
All right.
what's going through your head as you're like thinking?
When I'm soloing. All right, this might take more than 2 minutes. I don't know. But I mean, I think all right, it depends on the context. Let's just say it's something I'm comfortable over, because let's face it, if I'm playing giant steps, I'm thinking about the changes, right? It's like I'm trying to make that happen. But if it's like my own material, what am I thinking about? I'm thinking about how I could make the most out of whatever just happened, to make it simple and tell a story through that. There's two things that are. One thing in particular is really important, I think, is like some sort of development and having a sense of structure. You know, where am I trying to go, but how can I make the most of what just happened and like get there? I guess that's all I'm trying to think about.
Yeah.
And within that, there comes all the little things that, like, you know, am I going to add tension? But I'm not really thinking about that. I'm just thinking like, oh, we're going here, and that's getting me to this point. But I think, honestly, the first thing I play, if I'm in the right zone, the first thing I play is like, all right, that's the idea, and everything after that should develop from that. I really try to practice not jumping around too much into like random ideas that aren't related. And you know what? To someone listening, they might hear that, but when I'm really on it, like, trust me, it relates in some way.
Yeah.
And again, I think that's something I probably learned from Kenny Werner. Is like, he talks a lot about just playing a note and just accepting what happened and working with that. And I was actually teaching someone last night about this, and I was saying, it's like, watch, I'll play something bad, right? But I'm going to make the most out of it. And that bad thing became like super cool because I embraced it. Yeah. So I guess when I'm trying to make this not too like spiritual, but like when I'm soloing, I'm just trying to embrace what's happening and accept what wants to come. And for me, if there's one thing I can say that I do, it's that I'm honest with my music, and that's all I strive for, to be honest. So there, and I would like to reverse that question to you, if you want to answer that.
Well, so I'm still not particularly comfortable all the time with soloing. But when I like, the thing that's like helped me is like, if I'm scat soloing, I will like imagine that I'm having a conversation.
Cool.
And then I'm like that, like I will hear words in my head, but what's coming out aren't words. But if that makes any sort of sense.
Yeah, no,
at
I've
all.
actually practiced that as well.
Yeah. So that's what I've been doing, and there was this sort of like mind-blowing thing that happened. Like, I was soloing over these like changes to this track that I like had not heard before. They were very like non-diatonic.
What was
It
the
was
track
like just a very I don't even remember. It was just like a jam that the band was playing, and it was totally unfamiliar to me, and I was like first like just stumbling over every single change because it was just not like there was nothing that I felt like I could anchor to until I like noticed the pattern that was like floating under.
Mm-hmm.
And as I started like doing that, imagining, I just like shut my eyes and I was just like, I'm just having a conversation with somebody and I'm listening to like what's going on and like responding.
Yep.
Sort of. And there was like this sort of like thing, this shift that occurred that went from me like stumbling over the changes to like me with my eyes closed, and it was like the inside of my body was like this whole forest. it was like illuminated, and I was like walking through this forest, like talking to these trees in the solo in my head. And then I like opened my eyes at the end of the tune and was like, where am I? Like, what am I even doing? And like my professor was there. He was like, that was like, what? That was amazing. What happened? And I was like, I don't know.
Yeah, I think maybe to answer your question again, it's like, I don't know. You know, really. Like, I mean, I'm not sure
Starts
either.
one way and then it like develops itself.
Yeah, I'm just trying to express something, and I guess that something is, I guess it's supposed to be me in some way, but also that is largely part of something else, maybe.
It often, I feel like when it's really like truthful and authentic for me, like when the music I'm creating is like in that spot, it feels like it isn't so much me exactly. Like it is, but it isn't.
Right. Yeah, some sort of like extraterrestrial connection.
Whoa.
Totally. All right, so excuse me. So, if people want to check out your stuff, where can they go to find out a bit more about you?
There's my website, audreybussanich.com, Bussanich. Or if you go to Instagram and just type audrey.buss, Buss, the rest of my name should like pop up because it's like Yugoslavic nonsense.
Oh, right.
Bussanich. I don't know. Yeah, cool. So that's probably the hub of where you can find your way
into your sound. Great. Well, it's been fantastic talking to you. Maybe we can catch up after your tour and see how that went.
Yeah, that would be great. It was good to talk to you. Thanks for having me.
And that's the end of episode 7 of Sitting In with Audrey Bussanich. Make sure to go and check her out on social media. It'll be linked in the description of this podcast. And if you're getting value from this podcast, do consider getting some merch at teespring.com/sitting-in-podcast.